Hi, everyone. My name is Kenneth Ayn Barrera, and I am the Head of Research and Instructional Innovation Department. Now, for this tutorial video, what we're going to do is to look at on how do we write an effective review of related literature using, of course, Mendeley citation engine. So, in this part, I would like to reiterate two important things that a researcher for school year 2024-2025 upwards will do in their presentation. So to start off, we need to look at two important cases. One is that remember that all of the papers that would be submitted to the Research and Instructional Innovation Department should have the following. Number one is all citations should be documented well in the literature review matrix. And then second is that your paper should have at least a trace of using a citation engine. Now, when we try to look at how to construct an effective review of related literature, one must understand that there are certain tools that we need to use in order for us to write effectively. Number one is that we need to have a good laptop, and it is advised that as much as possible, use a laptop with a solid state drive. And then, of course, for reading, since you're going to read a lot of journal articles in PDF, then maybe it would also be advisable if you have a tablet. And then, of course, make sure that during the process, especially if you're going to use Mendeley, you have a mobile data. A phone would be good enough to actually carry you throughout maybe 7 to 8 hours, depending on your battery capacity, that it should have at least a good internet connection. Because remember, in using Mendeley citation, you need to have at least a good internet connection. So we all know that in writing a research paper, there are a lot of times that you will go with your team. And every time that you're going to reassign tasks, the team would actually help you solve most of the problems that you have with your research paper. That is the reason why make every moment count with your team. And more importantly, is that a research paper, especially in the context of undergraduate students like you need to understand that the battle is not only yours alone, okay? Although there is no I in team, but since you're a member of a team, there's ME on it, you need to make sure that you need to make a difference, help your team achieve, and even to some extent, help your team to have a better output, particularly in the research review of related literature. To start off, I know you already have your research titles with you. Just try to check the research management system for the approved titles. Or perhaps if there are certain complications that you're experiencing, then you can visit us in the Research and Instructional Innovation Department. To start off, I think the biggest question is that how do we really start writing a capstone project? Or if you are from the departments, from CTE, CCJE, and others, you might ask the question, how do you start a thesis? In some processes, the most important thing that you need to do before writing chapters 1, 2, and 3 is that you need to have an extensive collection of references. And I know for a fact, since you already have your titles with you, I hope that you are not regretting the idea that this is the approved title. Because for starters, there are a lot of times that people write their thesis at the first week, they're happy, but maybe on the second, third week, then they are already sad because it's difficult for them to find a resource or a journal article that would actually help them build their research papers. But you don't need to worry. Please approach our librarians in the Learning Resource Center so that they will help you and guide you in the process of selecting good and credible sources. When we look at a research paper, a literature review is very important. That is why we need first to understand how do we really put proper citations. For APA, IEEE, it's important that you need to master two of the most important citation styles, or in this case, the method in which you are going to cite. First is we have what you call as parenthetical citations. So in the parenthetical citations, you will notice that you will observe that there's an existence of a last name and the year of publication. If you're going to quote directly, then you need to have what you call as the page number of the source that you have. Remember, do not copy the exact lines from a journal paper and put your citation, because in this case, you will be guilty of plagiarism. So, as much as possible, do not directly copy the lines of the resources or the resource that you have on your paper. And then also, when you talk about parenthetical citations, the only thing that you need to remember is that the last name and, of course, the year of publication. If ever there are multiple authors, then you could actually look at down the idea on how to combine parenthetical citations. So, if you're also going to look at narrative citations, you're going to use the last name and then open and close parenthesis, the year of publication. And if it's also a direct quote, then you could also put the page number. So remember that there are certain situations in which you are going to look at narrative citations. So please give us a paper that would have a combination of narrative and in-text citations. So just please try to look at this part so that you'll be able to familiarize the two most important ways on how do you put in-text citations and narrative citations. So in creating a research paper, it's important to look at the use of Mendeley. Now, for the Mendeley demonstration in this video, kindly check our LMS. You will see there a tutorial video or a demonstration on how to use Mendeley as your citation engine. Now, if you are going to use Mendeley, there are three things that you need first to download. Number one, the Mendeley Web Importer. Second is the Mendeley Reference Manager. And third, the Mendeley Word plugin. For the Mendeley Word plugin, this is only applicable for students who are using Microsoft Word as their document processing software. Remember, WPS and other word processing platforms do not have a Mendeley Word plugin. So please, as much as possible, make use of Microsoft Word for your Word document processing. When you look at your Mendeley tutorial in our LMS, please be sure to subscribe and also put a like if ever you find the video helpful in your journey in writing your research paper. But let's now focus or deal further on how do we really create the review of related literature. So, what are the most important steps in doing a review of related literature? So, we all know that a research paper would not be a good research paper without the RRL. So, first, When you look at the statements that we have here, the bold letters like synthesis, overview of the current knowledge, identification of gaps, and of course, highlighting trends are the necessary things that you need to look at in your review of related literature. When we say synthesize, it doesn't mean that you're going to copy the line, go to Quillbot, and then paste it on your paper. But instead, what we're going to do is we need to read the entire journal and access the format for the literature review matrix. So the literature review matrix is actually available on our downloads area. You can ask your research teacher to give you the link on where you can get the literature review matrix. Remember, no literature matrix would mean that you have bogus literature review. So make sure that you download the PDF file, add it on the Mendeley web importer, and then, of course, use that in your citations for all of your documents related to your research work. But to formally look at it, when you look at RRL, it's going to look at on these two ideas. There's an idea of writing an essay with a citation, and there's also an idea of how do you craft or write a proper and ideal review of related literature. Since we're going to synthesize and evaluate the existing literature, what we need to do is to familiarize each journal article and their content. After studying the review of related literature or the paper, you need to synthesize and evaluate what are the certain parts that would be usable. When we say synthesizing, then we are going to critically evaluate that particular paper. But ideally, a good review of related literature, beforehand, you need to decide what's your statement of the problem or your research objectives. So in this case, if you have already a clear research question, then it would also be easy for us to arrange your review of related literature. Make sure to identify the gaps in the existing articles and also make sure that you know what's the content of those papers that you are reviewing. An essay would have a quotation from the line directly from a research paper, but if you're going to have a review of related literature, you're going to compare, contrast each of the journal articles and identify which would be something that's usable. So the important thing to need to understand about review of related literature is that you are going to critically analyze each source, identifying their strength, their weakness, and its relevance to your research question or research objective. So when you identify the gap, then you are going to discuss what's in the story of the discussions of a specific study and then combine it and connect all the dots and identify how this particular research papers would answer probably your statement of the problem or research objective. We also need to look at that there are certain steps on how to write an effective review of related literature. In the example that we have here, you will notice that the research literature matrix should be something that you need to fill out first before writing the review of related literature. First is that you need to scrutinize each document by extracting the following information. One is the title of the study, the year of publication, the authors, the abstract, the keywords that you will find in the journal, the methods, the conclusion, and the recommendation. When you are done breaking the information apart from the journal, now you will be writing what are the gaps in this particular research. Sometimes, when you look at the gaps, researchers tend to write it on their recommendation what are certain areas that are considered to be the weakness of the study, and maybe they are going to suggest the two other researchers that they should also do this and that. And maybe if you also observe that there's something that's lacking, then you personally write the notes on the research gap. The theme here would actually be related to the writing of the central ideas of certain journals so that it would be easy for you to connect the ideas that support each other and the ideas that are contrasting to each other. So the first step is you need to collect relevant journals and resources. Second is that you extract the information from the journals and the reading materials using the research literature matrix. And from the extraction of those information, you're going to identify the themes and the research gaps later. Step five would be connecting the ideas and critically analyzing the studies. And then on the sixth part is that you need to synthesize the literature and conclude with implications for your research. Now remember, what we wanted you guys to have is a thematically organized literature review. We don't want to see students copying from the lines of the text. And then what usually happens is that they go to rephrasing engines such as Quillbot and rephrase it and then copy and paste it again on their papers. That's now how you do it, my dear students. The thing here is that if you have the research literature matrix, this will help you connect the dots on which journals are connecting with each other. And of course, by critically analyzing it, then you will be able to have your own point of view on what are the things that were done already in the study and the things that they have done, and maybe where will you go into the discussion. Remember, your study should be a formulation of another form of knowledge, not a recycled plastic bag that you will just be copying the ideas from the other and then replicate the results of their study. Remember, the goal here is to generate new knowledge in your research paper. So, how do we look at the structure of a research paper, particularly in the review of related literature? One thing that we need to understand is there should be an introduction overview of the topic. In some cases, the first paragraph would actually talk about the reason why they are reviewing the literature and why is it important to the research. Also, make sure to define the scope of the literature. You look at the themes, the time period, or perhaps the type of studies being reviewed. In your paper, if you are using a module from the criminology department, you will see there the different types of literature review. But on this discussion, we're going to focus first on its structural foundation. Serve, serving the students who are conducting research. If you will notice, the first box that we have here, this refers to the introduction. So first is that you need to understand that there should be a scope and limitation on how you will be arranging your review of related literature. Make sure that the purpose would be there in order for you to really give the readers an understanding of what are the things that you are going to analyze in the review of related literature. And after that, you will also observe that in this part, the difficulties in writing research papers, that's considered to be the theme. In order for you to have the theme, you need first to arrange the documents that you have and identify what's the arcing theme that it is talking about. So in this case, If you're going to look at the second part, this is now the first part of your review of related literature. The purpose of doing comparing and contrasting, the purpose of critically analyzing the paper is grounded on the idea on how you properly discuss the existing body of knowledge. You also need to make sure that you will be able to connect that with your research question. So, for example, when you look at the second part, is that we need to have a thematic organization or a conceptual organization. Most of the time, the number of statement of the problems or research objectives would also be the equivalent number of the themes of a review of related literature. But in some cases, it could also be more because in your study or reading of the journal articles, there are certain studies that would also create different themes that would help you understand your study further. For example, in this organizational structure, if you have the theme with you, then you need to look at the studies or key studies or research findings that you need to discuss. Compare and contrast different perspectives, methods, and results, and make sure to highlight the gaps, and at the same time the unresolved issues in this area. On the second theme, you can also do the same, and also on the third theme. So, for example, in our study, proposed study, there are two important research questions or research objectives that we would like to answer in our research paper. So, we have challenges and difficulties by students, and then how, or let's say, the effectivity of the current resources and support systems. So, the two important themes that we have here are related directly to our research question or research objective. So this is also the part wherein you will also be doing your paper. On the last part is that you will also observe that there are also critical evaluation of the studies. So when there's already the fourth part, you synthesize all of the things that are considered to be in the themes, and you point out the patterns, the contradictions, and at the same time, where does the other studies converge? Discuss how these findings would support or challenge your research question or hypothesis. So if you have that on your account, remember that if you have a literature review matrix, it would also be easy for you to write your review of related literature. So if you have more questions, you can actually go to the Research and Instructional Innovation Department. Sir Reggie, and of course, yours truly will help you conceptualize your research questions at the same time your review of related literature. Or better yet, you can also go to your research teacher and, of course, your research advisor. We are also promoting that you read more research papers because in our adjustment for the policies, I think a good, healthy paper would have at least 100 citations or 100 resources used in the study. If you have more than 100, then the more the merrier. So once again, this is Kenneth Ayan Barrera, the head of Research and Instructional Innovation Department. Make use of the literature review matrix, and this will help you in writing your review of related literature. Thank you, and God bless you.